What do the songs Waymaker, Great Are You Lord, 10,000 Reasons, What a Beautiful Name, and thousands more popular worship songs all have in common? They each feature a pad sound played by the keys player to glue the band together and provide a sense of ambience that lifts the arrangement to a higher level. This video is an introduction to learning the techniques used to play pads across popular worship music, so you can begin doing this for yourself from the keyboard at your church. The only thing you'll need to know to follow along with this video is a basic knowledge of major and minor chords, and to be comfortable playing those chords in at least the key of C. Let me introduce myself. I'm David from SundaySounds.com. We create resources to equip the church and level up worship teams. If you are on a local church worship team, we're here to help and serve you. So, if you'd like to keep up with what we're doing, subscribe to the channel before we go any further. Now, let's clarify what the word pad even means, because that term can get thrown out a lot. It doesn't have to be confusing, and it's not just a buzzword. For our purposes at church, the definition doesn't have to be complicated. A pad sound is any worship key sound or preset that does these two things. Number one, it continues to sustain for as long as the note is held. Number two, it's typically designed to layer in smoothly with other keys parts and other members of the band. Now, you don't have to stress out about needing a ton of theory or sound design knowledge to get started using pads. We're going to break it down to 3 simple steps. The first step is to find a good pad sound to use. I guarantee that the keyboard rig you're already using has at least a couple presets that will work as a worship pad. So you don't need to go out and buy that shiny new keyboard before you can start using pads at church. All you need to do is remember the 2-point definition. A pad sound needs to sustain for as long as the notes are held, and it needs to layer in smoothly with the other keys parts and members of your band. In much of popular worship music, those 2 goals result in a particular kind of pad sound being used, often described as a warm pad. Here's a couple examples of that kind of pad sound. Now let's check out a few pads that might not fit the bill as a warm pad so you can hear the difference. So these 2 pads both sound great, but note the difference between them and this. This pad has less brightness as well as a bit less movement or energy as it sustains. These are some of the best types of pad sounds to gravitate towards if you're just getting started playing pads, because they'll blend into almost any song or band. Actually, right now, like they're blending in while I'm talking about them. So to find these for yourself on whatever keyboard hardware or software you're already using, start to navigate through the existing presets, looking for the word synth or maybe the word pad in the name of the preset. And as you play through them, listen for how big they are, how bright they are, and how much movement they contain. When you notice a sound that sits right in the mix, just make note of it so you can come back to it later when you need a good warm pad. Side note here, if you're using the software MainStage or Ableton Live, you can download some warm pad presets that are ready to use for free. I'll put a link in the description to that download if you'd like to snag those free presets for yourself. Step 2, choosing smart chord shapes. Once you've found a good pad sound, the second step is to practice choosing smart chords to play with that pad. If you're used to playing piano parts on their own, then this skill requires a bit of an adjustment from you, but it doesn't have to be a huge challenge. To figure out how to fill the right space, we can go back to the 2 points that define a worship pad. It needs to sustain, and it needs to layer in smoothly with other keys parts and the rest of the band. You can apply those 2 parameters then to inform the notes you play on the keyboard. To start, let's focus on the first requirement. It has to sustain. Now, obviously, this has to apply to any individual note the pad plays, but here's what beginners often miss. This should also be applied to the way you decide to play chord changes and progressions. Now, we actually talked about this a lot in our Beginner's Guide to Playing Worship Piano video, which we'll link in the description below. When you're playing a worship pad and moving through a chord progression, the fewer notes that move between chord changes, the smoother and more glue-like your pad sound will be. Now let me show you what I mean. Here's a chord progression in the key of C. I'm going to play each chord in root position, meaning 1, 3, 5 in my right hand. Now, if this was the chord progression of a song, I wouldn't be playing any wrong notes. But what you need to notice is how many notes are changing versus how many are in common or continue to sustain across each chord change. Because I'm playing in root position for each chord, there are very few notes in common when I change chords, which results in a choppier feel that's a lot less smooth. So from F to C, only the C note remains in common, and the newly introduced notes are a lot higher in the register than the release notes, all the way up here. From C to G, there are no notes in common, and all but one of the notes are a lot lower in the register for the G chord. We're going from here all the way down to here. Then from G to A minor, again, there are no notes in common. The notes are a little bit closer together. So let's take the same progression now, but instead of playing all root position, we're going to emphasize shared notes and similar note ranges across all the chords. I'll play this at regular speed and then slow it down and talk it through. So, we start with F, and we are going to play this F chord in root position, so 1, 3, 5. Then we move to C, first inversion or first position, so E, G, C. This keeps the C note on top and in common from the F chord to the C chord. The C stays on top, which keeps the most noticeable note in both chords the exact same, and the E and G just a step away from the two notes in the F chord, from F, A to E, G, and C stays on top. Next, we're going to go to G, second position. Here, the G note stays in common between the chords, and the other two notes each go down only a single note in the scale, so from here to here. This change is also pleasant to a Western music listener, as there's a bit of tension here when that high C is dropped down one note in the scale to B. Then we resolve that tension straight away by finishing this progression with A minor, second position. That C goes right back on top, and the lower two notes simply move back up one note in the scale, E, A, C. So notice that for 3 out of the 4 chords, the highest note is exactly the same, and the maximum distance any other note moves at one time is a single note in the scale. So one more time at speed. Now that the right hand voicings have been dialed in, I'm just going to play octave bass notes in the left hand to bring this all together. Here's a quick bonus tip for this step. I'm going to play this same progression twice more, but I'm going to switch up just a couple things on the second pass. Listen to the difference. You hear that? The difference and lift in that second pass? For the second time through, I'm choosing to bring the G and A minor chords up from second inversion to both in root position. So here and then here. This introduces notes above that high C, which was previously the highest note we'd played. You can do things like this at strategic moments or when you're playing a repetitive chord progression and want to mirror a lift in the melody or emphasize the end of a song section, for example. You can achieve that lift simply by practicing and thinking through how you'll choose your right-hand chord inversions in any progression. So to practice this really quickly, all you need to do is just define rules for yourself and then work within them. So say you have a 4-chord progression and decide, I'm never gonna let my right hand go higher than this note, but I wanna keep it on top as often as possible. So look at any chord sheet that you've already got for a song you know, pick a high note, and then see how closely you can stick to and build your shapes around that high note. Then flip that on its head and say, when can I purposefully practice going above that high note for dramatic effect or to lift into a chorus? Simply setting a boundary for yourself, practicing sticking within it, and then purposely practicing breaking that rule is a great way to practice this technique. Step 3, filling space and blending in. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Once you've chosen a good pad sound and thought a bit about your chord voicings, it's time to bring your hard work to the rest of the band and figure out how you can balance the piano playing you're asked to do with the role of filling space with pads. To start, most live worship bands are going to be relying on a single keyboard player to hold down all the keys, parts, and sounds, including pianos, pads, leads, maybe synth bass, and any other number of sounds and styles. The good news is, it's not that hard to layer a piano and a pad sound and play them together. How you'll actually accomplish layering multiple sounds together is going to be determined by the hardware or software that you're using. Software typically makes this really easy, and most modern hardware keyboards can do this nicely as well. If you're not sure how to do it, check out the user manual for your keyboard. Now, for this video, I'm using the Sunday Keys template in the software main stage. Sunday Keys includes a workflow for layering sounds together called Patch Builder, which makes it really easy to find and layer different worship sounds. So I've gone ahead and used Patch Builder in Sunday Keys to combine a nice upright piano with this warm pad that we've been using throughout the video. Once you've got your two sounds layered together, you're ready to dive in and give it a try. Let's keep it simple with that same example progression from step 2. F root, C first, G second, A minor second position. Now, I'm just playing a whole note on each chord change here, and it's great. But because of the way the pad sustains and blends, I do have some freedom to play melodic stuff in the right hand that stands out with the piano sound, but doesn't really impact or change the effect of the pad underneath. So I'm going to play the exact same thing. I've got the pad and piano. I'm going to add in some alternating notes in the right hand. This is possible because the pad meets the criteria we defined earlier. It sustains while notes are held, and it layers and blends with everything else going on. And I can even step outside of just these chord shapes and let the piano voice lead a bit. That is, playing some additional melodic parts in the right hand to enhance the song and add a bit of interest. Now that might seem like a big jump from where we started, but the key is the pad sound is designed to give me, as the musician, freedom to explore and play that piano sound, knowing the pad isn't going to muddy up the parts or distract from the main musical idea. Now here's another bonus tip for you, and honestly this might be the most stupid, obvious tip that gets so often overlooked. When you're trying to bring it all together, blend in with your band and fill the right amount of space throughout a song, move your hand positions up and down the keyboard purposefully as songs rise and fall. For example, that exact same chord progression could feel like an intro, or like a chorus, or with a couple of adjustments, like a nice big final bridge. Just by moving your right hand up and down the keyboard and playing with more or less intensity, the exact same concepts and sounds can translate to any moment of your song. This is the keys position in the worship band at its best, filling space but also raising and lowering the dynamic floor of the song itself to support the rest of the band and stand out at the right moments. Now, for that last demonstration, you may have noticed I was moving this joystick on my keyboard up and down as I changed intensities to the bridge. That's a control called a mod wheel. And while it might look different from keyboard to keyboard, you can usually program that control to increase or decrease the brightness of your pad sound, which is a great tool to have when you want to build up or drop down. I also added a bit of shimmer reverb to the pad for the biggest part. Shimmer is one of the most common effects applied for worship pad sounds, and that's why the effect is included in all the pads that are part of the Sunday Keys template. In fact, all the sounds from today's video are a part of Sunday Keys, our done-for-you worship keys rig that runs on your computer and can connect to any modern hardware keyboard that you already own. So we'll put a link in the description if you'd like to see more about Sunday Keys. The template is a great way to instantly have everything you need to sound great and prepare easily for playing worship piano and keys at church. Once you've mastered these steps, here's what to do next. Check out the playlist in the description of this video for more technique videos on playing keyboard and piano in church. If you're a software user, go ahead and download the free worship pads linked in the description so you can make use of those to apply these steps even more effectively. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to say thanks and so you don't miss our next videos. We're excited for you to start playing worship pads from the keyboard at church. Have fun.